Okay, hey guys, this is going to be a quick demo to show you the different ways you can make images and colors fade in and out of each other like I showed you in class. I'm going to do it a couple different ways. This first way, you can see it on my screen, I already did it, would be if you had a photograph and you had like a colored background and you want to fade the two together. Alright, so I'm going to undo what I just did and then you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to release this clipping mask. Alright, so I have a colored background, right, which I made with just the rectangle tool. I have a photograph that I placed inside my Illustrator file. And then I have this rectangle that's a gradient color right here. So let me make that shape again. So I'll make a rectangle. Oops. And then here. Okay. So if you make a regular gradient, it's probably going to default to just black and white. So that's sort of annoying. Let's change this color so you can see it. Okay. So I want to make this fade into blue. So first I'll use the eyedropper and pick up the blue. And then black arrow, other color, eyedropper, pick up the blue again. So now I have a blue rectangle. And I want this second dot opacity to be 0. So you can see now that it is starting to fade. And if I move this closer where the opaque part is at over the photo edge, it works. I can also kind of like play around with the size of the gradient and the sliders for how big of a gradient, how big of a transition I want it to be. So you kind of just mess around until you get something that you like. And then in the end, I'm going to put a clipping mask on top of everything. So I'm just, right, to make it look good, but you wouldn't really have to do this part if you don't want to. So make a rectangle over the whole shape. Control A or Command A to select all. Object, clipping mask, make. And there you go. So now it looks like the photo is fading into the blue background. Alright, so that is one way you could do this. This technique is also really helpful when you need to just darken an image. So here are some ads I was working on this week. And this ad I have, right, this logo and the subscribe button on top of this photograph. And it's a little hard to see the logo, the BizNow logo, because the photo's like a little light. If I zoom out to more realistic size, you can see, especially that W is kind of disappearing into the photo. So I made this gradient right here. If I put it on the white, you can see it. And if I open the gradient panel, here it is. You can see it's a very, very light gradient. So this is 50% opacity down to 0 of this dark gray or dark brown. And if I just stick it on top of the image but below the BizNow logo and the subscribe button, now all of a sudden that information really pops off, and it's very, very subtle, right? Like you can barely tell that it's darkened, but it's darkened just enough to really fix the legibility of the ad. So that these like sneaky gradients in light opacities is like a really good trick when you're trying to put logos and content over images. Just to like darken certain parts of the image with black or brown or gray to be able to let the content pop. So that's a very good move. Alright, so that's another way to use this gradient. So I did it the exact same way. I did this one. It's just, instead of going to 100% opaque, this one only goes to like 50 because it's really, really light. See? Okay, so there you go. The other way to do it is in Photoshop. So let's open something. We'll open this. Okay, so here's Photoshop. So if you want to make collages and stuff in Photoshop and you would like to have the photo sort of fade out so you can reveal the background, the way to do that would be in Photoshop. I think it's easier. So we're going to actually put another image behind this image. So let's place, we'll just do something completely different. Place, oops, that's really small. Let's go find a higher quality image. This will be large. Okay. Alright, so I have this skyline. We'll just do that. Alright, I'm going to put it behind these guys. Okay. So let's say now we want to have these guys like as if they are just kind of like hanging out on top of the skyline here. Alright, so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a layer mask to only reveal these two guys and hide everything else. I could obviously use the eraser tool and just start like mass erasing stuff, but then if I change my mind later, I don't have the rest of this image again. So the more sophisticated way to do it is with a layer mask. I'm going to use, in the layers panel, this rectangle and circle icon down at the bottom here. And when I click that, you can see now the layer has a link and a white box. And my color swatches on the left here have changed to black and white. Now I'm ready to do a layer mask. So I'm going to use a brush. And let's make it larger because we're going to just hide, fake erase a bunch of stuff. And let's make it opaque. Okay, and let's make it a little harsher. Okay, so now, there you go. Now you can see I'm coloring with black brush, and anytime I click my mouse and paint, it's essentially erasing the photo on top, like so. And if you look in your layers panel, you can see everything I've colored with the black brush is showing up in this layer icon, and everything white is what you can still see. So I can go through and do like a really quick and dirty erase on these guys. I don't think I want that guy. Oops, I went too far, undo. So the other good part about doing the layer mask is if you do go too far, like if I'm trying to erase this guy out, and instead of undoing what I just did, I could actually come through with a white brush and just paint him back in like so. See, if I use the white brush, I can see the image again. Black brush erases image. So that's how the layer mask works, and that's what makes this so handy. So then I would just come in, I would zoom in. You can go back to your brush. I'm going to need a much smaller brush to get a little bit finer detail in here. Or my preferred tool would be the polygonal lasso tool, which is the third thing down. You might have to click and hold to get the middle one, polygonal. That way it helps it to be really zoomed in. Okay, that way I can sort of click, and every time I click, it locks that point, and I can kind of go around the guy and cut them out that way. Obviously, it's going to take some time. Alright, so that is how the layer mask works. Oopsies. I had black, we need white. Now I hit delete, there you go. Alright, and you can kind of start to see it there. There was a little bit of a feather on that last selection where he's starting to become faded out. Again, this is probably not like the best picture to do this with, but that's okay. So if we want to fade him out, you can do it a couple different ways. You can use the polygonal lasso tool and have a feather, so you have a feather of 10 If I make the feather larger, it'll basically make the transition point for where I deleted the pixels, or didn't really delete, but hid the pixels, blurrier. So let's just do a big swath here and you can see what that looks like. So you can see, oh, I think I actually did just hit delete instead of, yeah, paint. uh, Brush, other brush, like so. See how it's blurry past the selection? It goes out to a certain point based on our selection. So they're starting to become a little transparent. Um, you can also just use a really fuzzy brush. So if the hardness is 0, see it's blurry. And if I knock down the flow and the opacity, it becomes like much subtler. And that's like a good way to get the transitions really nice between the two images. So you need to have a smaller brush to get more detailed transition like this, where he kind of like his head's like disappearing into the building, like so. So you can definitely use your layers in Photoshop to make a layer mask, and that is one way to sort of blur the transition between images, especially if you're going to start collaging different images on top of each other. Photoshop is the place to do it. If you're looking to just use gradients to make it look like images are fading in and out of each other, or to give yourself a little dark spot on for copy on an image, you can do that in Illustrator or in InDesign or in Photoshop. So it's whatever program you prefer working in for what you're doing. All right, I hope that was helpful, you guys, and have fun.